One of my jobs was to go and pick peaches that had fallen off the trees. And one of the kids there was Joe Serna.
Joe Serna never forgot where he came from. And that's important, because so many people leave the fields and they never return. They never look back. They never think about those men, those women, and oftentimes children that continue working. But Joe Serna never forgot.
Throughout our childhood into being teenagers and off into college, we always understood that you help those who cannot help themselves, who cannot speak for themselves, the underrepresented. And that's really what I took away from my father's involvement with the UFW. And of course that emotional attachment, because he himself was a farm worker.
In the mid-1970s, Joe worked for the then Lieutenant Governor Merv Dymally as an education consultant. But whenever Caesar would call him, Joe would drop whatever he was doing for the Lieutenant Governor and go help out Caesar and the farm workers. Once Lieutenant Governor Dymally asked Joe, well, who are you working for, me or Cesar Chavez? And Joe said, oh, Caesar.
One thing that Joe had was a lot of political savvy, but in terms of art and in terms of aesthetics, he didn't have a lot of that. So he depended a lot on the designs that we came up with. He would say what he needed, what was needed by the union. We would put it together and show him and say, yeah, this is what we need.
Caesar inspired millions of other people, Latinos and folks from all walks of life and every background, that they too could make a difference. And I think Joe was one of the best examples of Caesar's inspirations.
One of the harder points in our life as a family when our parents split up. And during that time, here's a man in around 1977 taking custody of his kids. And so it was just my brother and I with my dad in our small Curtis Park home. And I remember everything from complaining about chili beans and spaghetti every single night, which it felt like every single night, to his ability to really fill the role as a mother and a father during that time. And on top of it, doing all his community work. I always recall Christmases, especially when Phil and I were teenagers, and Dad would stuff our stockings with the silliest things, and he thought they were hilarious. And Phil and I would just kind of look at him on Christmas Day thinking, this isn't really that funny, but that was just who he was. He was a big kid, and he never lost that sense of humor till the very end. I mean, he was just a really goofy guy at the end of the day. And that's a side that I don't think he made known to a lot of people, but those of us who were very close to him saw it on a daily basis.
Some of my first memories as a 2, 3, 4-year-old were actually sitting atop his shoulders in front of Safeway, picking table grapes. We focus sometimes so much so on Joe Serna, the former mayor of Sacramento, but remember, his passion was really education.
I think in every single class that I ever took, he always reminded the students about giving back to the community service. And he reminded all of us in every one of his classes about his background with the Peace Corps. And so I think he was trying to inspire that next generation to do the same thing that his mentor, President Kennedy, had done for him. So he's sort of my President Kennedy in that that passion that he had and that call for service. A lot of the students saw that same calling, that we can make a difference. And we learned that right from the classroom.
He championed school reform in Sacramento, coming up against old friends who were longtime school board members that he knew from Democratic politics, and forcing school reform on the city by recruiting and financing and organizing a reform slate that turned the Sacramento City Schools into a national model for school reform. You know, Joe ran out of time, and he didn't have time to fulfill some of his dreams of getting elected to a third term as mayor, of playing on the senior PGA golf tour. Most important, he didn't have more time to spend with his young grandson and his family. Yet Joe the professor did take the time to teach the wary residents of his city that politicians can use the tools of their trade, building consensus and counting votes, to get things done for people. Joe Serna gave politics a good name.
Because he was never a politician, he was always a public servant.
Joe Serna's legacy is that everybody can make a difference in their own life if you give them the opportunity.
What Serna has done for me is given me a step up the ladder to become a productive member of society once again, and help me deal with my alcohol and drug issues, as well as being a better parent and a better participant in my community.
It was Joe's desire that a good portion of his will be distributed and help initiate the UFW Foundation once he passed away. As a result of what Joe believed in, we now have the UFW Foundation. It's moving forward, and it's on the brink of being a part of the most explosive legislation to impact on the lives of farm workers in this generation. Immigration reform implementation will be a key area of work.
Everybody has somebody that's touched them in a very profound way. I'm in politics because he was able to show me that I can break those barriers, not only as a minority, but as a woman.
This is God's country, that a farm worker can become a professor and a mayor of the capital city of the 7th or 8th largest economy in the world, and to be revered and regarded as well as Joe was. Only in America it can happen. I miss Joe very much, but many, many other people too. But he's watching us, and his memory is alive, and his thoughts are with us. So we must continue fighting for good things, for our people that can least take care of themselves.